Hello, today we're going to talk about different ecosystems. Just to kind of give you a little overview of this, we start off with an organism. A bunch of individuals of the same species makes up a population. All the populations inhabiting an area is called a community. All forms of life and abiotic factors is called an ecosystem or biome. And then we have a global ecosystem or the biosphere. So this biosphere is all the species on Earth along with their environments. Okay? It is kind of including everything, the water, the crust, the atmosphere. So everything on the world. Okay? So a biome is a major kind of ecosystem. And we're going to talk about a variety of different ecosystems or biomes, and you're also going to do a little project on that. This is just showing you the distribution of the world's major biomes. Another picture of that. Okay, so we're going to start off talking about the desert. In deserts, it's very harsh living conditions. There's intense solar radiation. There are winds. There's very little moisture. There really is no cloud cover. It has high temperatures. It can reach up to 138 degrees Fahrenheit. And it does cover about 30% of land. We do have some deserts that are produced in the rain shadows of mountains. As far as deserts go, there's really sparse vegetation, okay, of shrubs. You really have brief periods of spring and summer rains that allow the desert floor to be carpeted with masses of colorful annuals. They do germinate, they grow, they flower, they do release their seeds, and they become dormant until next year. And again, that's a very, very brief time period. Cactuses are very popular there, and they have evolved succulent tissues that will help prevent dehydration. We're going to have water accumulating in roots, stems, and leaves of the cactus. Animals typically burrow in the daytime. Kangaroo rats, ground squirrels, and so forth are some examples of that. And they do search for food at night. The next one we're going to talk about is the tundra. The tundra is frigid. It's very treeless of landscape. It's marshy almost, unforested area. The growing season lasts about 50 to 90 days, with the warmest temperature being about 50 degrees Fahrenheit. So we do have thick snow covering the ground and icy winds blowing during the winter. There is a brief summer that will melt the snow and create the frigid marshes and ponds. Okay, only the top 0.5 meters or 1.5 feet will thaw. So the ground is typically frozen. So we call that permafrost. Okay, that's going to halt root growth and restrict drainage. So it's very hard for things to grow in there. There are two types of tundra. There's the alpine tundra and the Arctic tundra. Alpine tundra is found at like mountain ranges, and the Arctic tundra is found at high latitudes in Alaska, Canada, Europe, and Asia. We get a lot of low-growing plants like mosses, lichens, perennial grasses, sedges, dwarfs. There's only really about 600 species of plants in the tundra. Okay, the next one we're going to talk about is the coastal ocean. The coastal ocean is found along edges of the continent and the reefs. The greatest concentration of marine life actually live here. There's abundant sunlight. The waters are rich in nutrients. We have waves, winds, tides stir these waters to distribute those nutrients. We do have photosynthetic organisms that are going to grow. And the coastal waters is often called the neritic zone. Next, we have the open ocean. Sunlight and nutrients will vary from one location to the next. And again, sunlight does not penetrate the ocean below 100 meters, which is about 320 feet. And the average ocean depth is about 12,500 feet or 3.9 kilometers. So the sunlight zone is very thin. So photosynthesis can occur, but it's only really in 2% of the ocean's volume. Next, we're going to talk about the coniferous forest. The coniferous forest is where evergreens dominate, so pine trees, fir trees, spruce trees. This is found in the northern hemisphere. We have North, South, Central America, Europe. We do get a colder winter. Growing season is a little short, but biological activity is about 3 to 4 months, which is pretty good. Temperature is below 32 degrees Fahrenheit for more than 6 months of the year. Soils tend to be acidic. There's always a buildup of those needles that occur from the evergreens. And it often can be called the taiga, which is the swamp forest in Russia, when you have your coniferous forest with of northern latitudes. Okay, our next thing to talk about are the grasslands. Here in the grasslands, we have densely packed grasses and herbaceous plants. It's a big area for agriculture, livestock grazing. There are cold winters, hot summers, seasonal rainfall, and it is found worldwide. There are times that fires will often clear the grasslands, and this is okay because that will release nutrients for new growth. Okay, we have different types of prairies. We have tall grass prairies, mixed grass prairies, and short grass prairies. But again, they all have something to do with grass. Our next thing is the tropical rainforest. This is found around the equator. There are warm temperatures, abundant rainfall, about 100 inches per year. There is a constant day length throughout the year. And pretty much over half of all the forests are tropical. So they're found in Central, South America, Africa, India, Asia, Australia. What's so cool about tropical rainforests is that they contain most of the species and plants of animals. They're very diverse. About 2.5 acres or 1 hectare may contain more than 100 species of trees, 300 species of orchids, and thousands of species of animals. Okay, you do have what's called an understory and an overstory. Understory is a layer of tall trees that's so densely packed together that there's little sunlight that penetrates through their canopy, kind of prevents sunlight to pass through. The overstory is the upper story of the rainforest, and that's formed by trees towering over 50 meters. The rate of decomposition in this biome, or the tropical rainforest, is the fastest. It hoards fungus and bacteria, which are huge decomposers. No nutrients really accumulate in the soil. They're either absorbed directly by the plants or they're going to be washed away by rain. So their soil is poor. The temperate forest is next. The temperate forest have their leaves of the trees kind of drop when there's unfavorable conditions. So they are found in areas that have very distinct season. Trees are not as dense, that allows sunlight to reach the forest floor. And we do get many layers of trees developing. Lakes and rivers is next. This is pretty much standing bodies of water that form in depressions of the Earth's crust. Just so you know, lakes are larger and deeper than ponds, and lakes actually have 3 zones. There's the littoral zone, the limnetic zone, and the profundal zone. The littoral zone is shallow. It's kind of along the water's edge. The limnetic zone is the open lake, the lighted waters. And the profundal zone is the dark waters where light really doesn't penetrate. Okay. In spring and autumn, there's a burst of activity, biological activity in lakes. The lakes recirculate, bringing nutrient-rich nutrients to the surface. Okay, so there's a lot going on like that. When we talk about lakes, we also get that term eutrophication. And if you remember, eutrophication is when there's an increase of nutrients, and that creates a big algae bloom, and then the algae die off, and then that takes up all the dissolved oxygen for the fish, and then we get fish dyes. Okay. Estuaries. Estuaries is when rivers and streams meet with the ocean. Okay, so we're mixing fresh water with salt water. The water tends to be warm and murky. Organisms there has to be able to tolerate different concentrations of salt because the salinity can change within minutes. The water is continually enriched with nutrients from the rivers and from the debris that gets washed in by the tides. Okay, plankton really flourish here, and that's going to provide food for crustaceans, fish, shellfish, fish that spawn, and so forth. The intertidal zone. This lies between high and low tides at the interface between the ocean and the land. Organisms must be able to survive in both water and air. The flow of tides will submerge and expose their habitats, okay? So you get tide pools, which is isolated pools of water that left behind by rock depressions when the tide recedes, kind of in rocky shores. Sometimes you get mudflats, which are the sandy beaches that form along non-rocky shorelines. And you do get some different organisms that will inhabit this area. The next one that we're going to talk about are marshes, swamps, and bogs. This is the wetlands, okay? There's a lot of cattail reeds in here, amphibians, reptiles, birds. There's a lot of different nutrients that are very important as a resource for this environment. So you guys are going to do a little presentation on this. If you have any questions, please see me in class. Thanks.